Hey everyone, this Halloween we're hosting a virtual live show with our good friends over at Cult Podcast. This double feature is part of a Panic Fest online tricks and treats event. Because of the pandemic, a lot of us aren't able to properly celebrate our favorite time of year. However, now we have an opportunity to have some spooky fun and help out some friendly folks in Kansas City.
25% of each purchase goes to help keep the Screenland Armor, one of our favorite theaters in America, in business. Additionally, we'll be releasing some limited edition merch. So from now until Thursday, October 8th, you can pre-order your own piece of Horror Virgin and Cult Podcast history.
Tickets are on sale now for $20, and our shirts are available for $25. However, we're offering a bundle for $40 where you get both. It's going to be so much fun, and we can't wait to see all of you there. More information is available at cultpodcastshow.com. Remember that these shirts are super limited edition and are only available for pre-order until October 8th. So see you all soon, and keep it spooky.
Keep it ooky spooky.
Consequence Podcast Network.
This episode brought to you by the following patrons: Tristram, Kate, Isaac, Ori, Matthew, Karoon, Eddie, Nick B, and Chris. And Chris and all the patrons want you all to know that you are loved and you are listened to and you are an important member of this awesome community. So thank you guys so much for supporting and loving the podcast so much. And if you want to hear the continued saga of the Patreonicals, stay tuned at the end of the episode.
Do you guys hear that?
What?
There's like scratching on the door. I think it's our theme music, but I killed the theme music yesterday.
Do you guys see how bad it was raining earlier today? It like burned my skin.
Guess I should stop dancing naked in graveyards. I bought a shirt that says thick thighs and spooky vibes, and I'm just eating as many pumpkin items as I can.
Well, you know it's fall out west because the sky's turned orange.
We can't breathe outside. Thank you for listening to Horror Virgin. I'm Paige.
I'm Mikey.
And I'm the Horror Virgin Todd, which means I don't like scary movies, but you guys make me watch them. And this week, you guys made me watch The Return of the Living Dead. Yes.
I think I should have made you watch Night of the Living Dead first because I feel like you missed a lot.
We'll have to come back around and watch Night of the Living Dead. There is also some errors about Night of the Living Dead in this movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll get to it when we get to it within the film. But
fair enough. So, have you guys seen this movie before?
Yep.
I had never seen this movie before.
Oh, all right. Same with me, Paige.
And I am a zombie fan. And I did not even know this movie existed. And I am so glad that it's in my life now.
Same.
I loved it.
Same. And I will say, this has the scariest zombies of any movie ever.
I don't know about that.
Oh, no. 100%.
Oh, because you can't kill them.
It's more than just that, Paige. With zombie movies, you either have fast zombies or slow zombies. That's it. That's like their biggest defining factor. In this movie, they're fast zombies. They can talk. Mm-hmm. They can set traps for the cops when they come. They're like hyper intelligent, super fast beings that want to eat your brain. There is no zombies that are truly scarier than this zombie.
They are truly reanimated beings.
Yes.
They're not just reanimated corpses. It's like it brings the person back, which is wild.
Todd, I think this is the movie where fast zombies came from.
Is it?
I have fun facts about it.
Okay. These zombies, I mean, they're not scary because the movie's not scary. But like, if you think about a scary world, like if Christopher Nolan did this movie, the zombies would be so scary.
Yeah.
I saw this as a child.
This is not a movie a child should see, Mike.
It is not. I'm pretty sure it's made for adults. I'm surprised that it's not rated R, and I think it's...
Wait, this is not rated R?
So there was a weird thing in the 80s where
that's right.
The current rating system didn't exist. And so things like upper torso nudity didn't get the same rating that they would today.
Trash is completely naked, like throughout half of the movie.
She's actually not. And I've got notes on that later.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it came on a lot in like TNT, like all that stuff.
How? I don't understand how you could do this movie edited, because Trash is legit naked the entire time she's on screen, except for like the very first scene.
They did the old-fashioned like blur.
Oh, so was this the first time you'd seen it unedited?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. So what was your thought now that you saw Trash naked, I guess?
It's still funny.
It is. Yeah.
But man, that one character was naked the whole movie, and I don't remember that. I thought it was scarier as an adult, and I liked it better as a film today than I probably ever have.
Oh, this film is a blast.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be real with you. It's bad in the best way.
Yeah, this movie is objectively terrible, but it's funny. Like, it's fun to watch because it's terrible.
This movie is hilarious.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll say about this movie that I really, really appreciated that most bad movies like this get horribly wrong, and this movie doesn't. It sets clear rules and clear expectations for the monster that shape the rest of the film. I do think they kind of write themselves into a corner a little bit by making them damn near impossible to kill. But from like minute 10 or so in this movie, know the rules of this world, and it does not deviate from them.
Let's just get into this fucking movie because we got a lot to talk about. Let's get there.
So the film opens with a title card that says the events portrayed in this film are all true. The names are real. Names of real people and real organizations. And then we immediately cut to a building that says, you need a medical supply? You need it? We got it. None larger, which is the fakest name ever.
But I like that it sets up out of the gate that this is going to be a silly movie immediately.
Yeah, and I think we get that shot of the sign specifically for that, where they were just like, haha, just kidding.
Yeah. I also think they're poking fun at movies, and I realize like The Conjuring hadn't come out yet, but movies like that say they're based on real events, but they're not. You know what I'm saying?
Amityville Horror had come out, so I think it's probably...
And Texas Chainsaw.
So
that's probably what it is, yeah.
We then get a timestamp that says July 3rd, 1984, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I thought it was weird that they went with daylight, but sure. Yeah, most movies go with standard. Most movies would be like Eastern Standard Time. But they're like, no, it's daylight savings. And we felt the need to tell you specifically about it.
It's very important to the plot, though, Paige. I mean, it comes up never.
I mean, this is a Mikey movie, so this
is.
So we cut to inside the medical supply, and Bert, the man who owns the medical supply, is leaving, and he says the lab is closing up for the day. One of the guys is going to stay with the new kid. The guy who's going to stay is Frank. The new kid is Freddie. Yeah. And I believe Frank is Freddie's uncle.
I thought he was just referring to himself as the uncle because he was like showing him the ropes or whatever. I couldn't tell either. You might 100% be right, but I just felt like Frank was like this creepy older dude.
Yeah, I thought he was just a stranger.
And then as Bert is leaving, he just says, see you Sunday at the barbecue. And then he says, no matter what happens, don't name it after me, which is the strangest thing to say after leaving a room.
Yeah, what were they referring to?
They're going to make a baby.
Yeah, I thought that was the implication of just like, whatever trouble you get into, don't name it after me. The implication being that they would have a baby and name it after him, which doesn't make a ton of sense.
I thought they were talking about partying 4th of July weekend.
They are talking about partying 4th of July weekend because it is 4th of July weekend. Yes. Frank then takes Freddie on a tour of the medical supply facility.
Right.
And he starts by helping him fill an order for 2 adult female skeletons with perfect teeth.
This warehouse, though, is legit the most ridiculous place of all time.
It's bonkers. Because it looks like a standard, like a retail warehouse where it's just got like shelves. But the things they have on those shelves and the things that they consider to be their normal merchandise is crazy.
Yeah, like a half a dog?
Half a dog. Yeah, we'll get to the split dogs in a second.
Oh my God.
So they pull a skeleton down and pack it in a crate. At that point, I realized that Freddie looks strikingly like a dude that I went to high school with and had a crush on, which was it was upsetting.
I feel like Freddie and Frank had the saddest storyline of the movie.
Oh, is it because they slowly died over the course of the movie and then one of them commits suicide?
I have notes about the suicide later, but if it makes you feel any better, everyone in this movie dies.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
It's a comedy, listeners.
So Freddie asks Frank, where do you get all these skeletons from?
Oh, the skeleton farm in India that everyone knows about.
Which is not where people get skeletons from.
No.
It's the most bizarre answer. He says, all skeletons come from India. There's an international treaty.
No, there's not. Yeah.
And then he follows it up with, how should I know? The real question is, how do they get so many with perfect teeth? How many people do you know die with perfect teeth? Which, by the way, is a great question.
That's fair. Yeah.
That is very fair.
Also, these skeletons are clearly just plaster.
Yes, there
ain't no
clearly,
way actual skeletons.
No, they're Halloween decorations that
Oh,
they were
that's
just
true.
put
Yeah.
plastic over it and no one will notice.
The whole warehouse just basically looks like a Halloween store.
It's a spirit Halloween store.
This place also carries prosthetic devices and wheelchairs.
Right.
So like a true medical supply. But then it has something that he calls split dogs.
Yes.
And he says those are rad, which is not the description that you really want.
It was the 80s, though. I mean, it's fine. Yeah. But he is talking about a dog that has been cut in half. So,
Oh, totally rad.
no, Mikey, no.
When he first said it, I thought it was one of those like resin models that you could like take apart and see the cross section.
No.
Not a real dog, but it is
Right.
very much a real dog that is dead that they have cut in half.
Yeah.
First of all, I don't think split dogs are a thing.
No.
Maybe
I don't
they
think-
used to be. I don't think they're a thing now. Secondly, the next thing he shows him in this medical supply are fresh cadavers.
Yeah.
Which, like, that's not how this works.
No.
He's also showing him like the ropes of the facility they're in, right?
Right.
And all of that from the moment Bert leaves to this part where they walk into the meat locker with the cadavers is one continuous shot.
Yes.
And I thought it was super impressive that they did it in one shot because that's a long period of time. I mean, honestly, I really feel like the filmmakers that made 1917 saw this movie and they were like, that first scene, but the whole movie.
So here's what's even crazier. There's some really cool shots in the credits, which
Yeah.
are still another 2 scenes from now. We haven't even had the credits yet. But yeah, you don't just store fresh cadavers. That's not a thing you can store. That's like...
You sound like big government. That's not what Papa Reagan said I could do in the 80s with my cadavers.
Well, I'm just saying, like, he has them on call. Like, if anybody happens to call for a cadaver...
Yeah, you don't keep them on inventory. Like, I have been to a few research centers that do have cadavers just in storage. Like, I've been in a room like that, but they do not hang them on meat hooks like are posed in this. They're on, like, slabs, like it's a morgue, right? They keep them for, like, research purposes, and you only get the number you need. You don't have, like, inventory on hand, right?
Right. But it's also a thing that you have to, like, order ahead of time.
Yeah,
It's not-
you
it's not
you
a
gotta
thing.
call this warehouse and order it.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
what this warehouse is, Paige. Duh.
Yeah, Paige. This is
That's not what I mean. But, like...
Oh, and they're clearly working with the funeral home next door. Like, the
Yes.
funeral home next door 100% is burying empty caskets and giving bodies to this warehouse to sell. That is
100%.
definitely happening. Yeah.
Absolutely. That should mean that like half the cemetery is empty coffins, but like no, we find out that that's not the case later. The next thing we cut to is what can only be described as a gang of 80s stereotypes walking down the sidewalk.
I agree, Paige. You're 100% right. But they are stereotypes that would not hang out with each other.
It's like Breakfast Club.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is every member of the Breakfast
Yeah.
Club at once.
But they're voluntarily hanging out with each other, which is insane.
Yes.
It's the week after the Breakfast Club.
Well, and they don't. Here's what's crazy.
Holy
they don't.
shit, I want a shot-for-shot remake of this, but with the Breakfast Club kids, just like literally the week after.
The thing is, they don't seem to like each other, which I find
They
kind
don't.
of crazy. They
Yeah.
don't really seem like friends, but they're trying to figure out what they're going to do that night. And one of them says, the cops said they'd shoot us if we go back to the park. And then he follows it up with, I'm in no mood to die tonight. And then a girl in this group that we later find out her name is Trash
Yes.
says, I like death. And he says, you like sex with death, death with sex, and then we cut away. We have no further information.
Well, okay, so you missed, I think, the most important line of dialogue in that scene, because that guy turns around and talks to, like, girl with the crazy hair. It's like the wig that's, like, up in, like, sort of a mohawk,
the
and it's blue and
purple
black.
hair.
Yeah, blue and purple. That's what it was. And he goes, do you like sex with death? And she goes, no. And why don't you fuck off and die? And I was like, ugh. This whole thing was so she could say that, and it was not effective.
It was not effective.
I mean, but it is effective of setting up the movie as ridiculous and just silly.
Yes.
I just got obsessed with the fact that one girl, not trash, but the brunette one, looks just like Vanessa Bayer on like Saturday Night Live.
She does. Now here's the other crazy thing. They do such a terrible job of introducing people. I did not know most of these people's names until the credits, and that's when I wrote them down.
Yeah. I literally called one of them Freddie's girlfriend because she's the one that's super...
Tina.
Okay, so that's Tina. Okay. We know Trash's name because she gets naked and they call her Trash to her face. And at first I thought they were insulting her, but that is a moniker she takes on herself. So like that made sense. And also we learned Suicide's name in the movie, but the rest of the guys...
He wrote it on his car.
I know.
Yes.
I know.
So this scene with them walking is also where Tina, Freddie's girlfriend, is hanging out with them, which, by the way, she does not match them at all. She should be in a completely different friend group. She looks like she walked out of a John Hughes film, like
yeah, she's Molly
16
Ringwald
Candles.
in 16 Candles. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Yeah, Paige, 100%.
I thought this was New York until they nuked it and they were like, it's Louisville. I was like, oh.
I'm sorry, what about this set made you think it was New York?
Fun fact, it is not a set. It was filmed on location in Bakersfield, California.
Okay.
Oh.
To stand in for Louisville. Yeah. But so, yes, imagine Molly Ringwald joined the Lost Boys, and that's what we're watching, walking down the sidewalk being like, how do you feel about sex and death? And then Molly Ringwald is like, we should pick up Freddie, because she has an insane voice.
She does, really. You're right. Yeah.
He went to work at this medical facility, and they're like, okay, let's pick Freddie up. Exposition over.
Yeah.
Well, first I have to say, he got a job. What a loser.
Oh, my God.
All I want to do tonight is party.
Oh, and one of the girls, forgive me, I don't know the name, but she goes, I just want to party. Like
it's blue and purple hair, I think.
Yeah, over the top, man. It's so funny.
We cut back to the medical supply, and Freddie is sitting across the desk from Frank, and he asks him, what's the weirdest thing you've ever seen here?
The weird opener, yeah.
Fair question.
Oh, you think so?
That is
Okay.
a very
All
fair
right.
question. I would be asking the same shit.
Okay.
This is where Frank launches into a monologue that makes no sense, where he says, did you see the movie Night of the Living Dead? It was based on a true case. And then he proceeds to say that in 1969 in Pittsburgh at the VA hospital, there was a chemical spill and all of that stuff kind of leaked out into the morgue and made all the bodies jump around as if they were alive. Now, the problem with that is that Night of the Living Dead was released in 1968.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So Freddie follows up with what chemical, and what Frank says in response is baffling. And he says it's called Trioxin. It was made to spray on marijuana for the army? Question mark?
I mean, I know that a lot of armies throughout time have used drugs to keep them awake and stuff like that. And I can sort of see the army giving...
Marijuana is not going to keep anyone awake.
Oh, no. I thought that they were giving it to them just in case they did get shot and quote-unquote die. It would keep them alive and then eating brains of the enemy.
And I think it's meant to be kind of MK Ultra-ish, where they were testing like LSD and stuff.
Well, that they did, yeah.
This whole spraying stuff on marijuana just made no sense.
You guys are really focusing in on these details. You're really bogging down the enjoyment
Yeah, I mean,
of the
that's
movie.
fair. I think it's our fault to want to listen to what the characters are saying in this movie. Clearly, Mikey.
This is what I like to refer to as the boring part.
Oh, is it because Trash still has her clothes on, Mikey?
No, it's because the can hasn't been opened. Pandora's egg hasn't been broken.
That's fair.
Pandora's making omelets and we're here for it. So Frank then says that the guy who made the movie, George Romero, was told that he couldn't use the real facts, so he changed it for the movie. Then he says that the army shipped all of the contaminated corpses out, but the bodies went to the medical supply and not the chemical company where they were supposed to go. And then he says, do you want to see them? And he says, see what? And he says, the corpses. They're down in the basement. They've been here for 14 years. And he then proceeds to take Freddy down into the basement where they step on Chekhov's third step.
Yeah. Don't step on that third step.
It's a bitch.
Yeah, it's a little step shadowing because that
Yes.
comes back almost immediately. Yeah.
Yes. They go to the containers and he opens one and the containers have like
Viewing hole.
like a viewing hole, like
Yeah.
a window.
Yeah.
And there's clearly like an old corpse inside.
Yes.
They're like oil drums with like a curved top on them, kind of.
Yeah. He then kind of cleans the window, the like little viewing window.
With his conveniently placed Windex and paper towels.
Yeah, but okay, but he did not rip off one paper towel, guys.
he
He
wiped
used
it
the
with
whole
the
roll.
roll.
That
Yes.
was insane. Like, I was mad that he did that. I was like,
I was
why?
like, he's not
Do you
married.
know what made me mad? The fact that there was a payphone above those containers that comes back later. But it's not just a regular wall phone. It looks like a payphone. And why would you put a phone there? It
Well-
makes no sense.
Because you should have called the number on the barrels 14 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they didn't. They just refused to call the number for 14 years.
Yeah. And then Freddy says they don't leak, do they? And then Frank says, of course not. They were made by the army.
The Army Corps of Engineers.
Yes. And it immediately leaks.
And cue the music, which is like the best part.
Oh,
Cue
yeah.
the music because this is the credits. And so
Yes.
Freddie and Frank are passed out. The body starts to thaw in the drum. We get some cool ass credits where we see the gas from that drum leak up through the vents and out into the corpse room upstairs, and it reanimates that corpse. And we get what is probably my favorite shot in this entire movie, where you've got the reanimated corpse moving in the body bag, and you've just got a slow dolly forward on that corpse
Yeah.
down a hallway that is way longer than the room that we saw before, but it makes for a very cool shot
It does.
as the credits roll over it. After the credits end, we cut to a giant mansion, and it says 4 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So now we know that we're on the West Coast, and it's about 2 hours later.
I loved this part so much.
It's so insane.
Because this guy is so mean to his wife.
It's so
And this
funny.
is one of only, he's in 3 scenes of this movie total.
Oh, we get a lot of setup for his character, and we see him once for 30 seconds in about an hour and 10 minutes.
we get the setup here where he comes home for dinner and he's in full army uniform. And I mean like decorated dress blues. Like,
Yeah, he just came from a parade. Like, that's
Yeah.
how he's dressed.
Yeah, he's a major, I think, right?
He is a major asshole. That's true.
so he comes in and his wife is like, how was your day? And he was like, total crap, which is great response.
Yeah. And I'll say that's not why I think he's an asshole. You're allowed to have a total crap day, and you should,
Yeah.
if you do, vent with your wife. It was like, he was like, what's for dinner? And she goes, oh, I made your favorite, lamb. And he goes, I had it for lunch. I was like, good Lord, this man is horrible to his wife.
And this is where we see that he has a crazy armoire with a military computer in it.
Yeah.
The size of the armoire.
Well,
And
it was
he-
the 80s. That's realistic in the 80s. Yeah.
Which we find out is like, it's so they can get in touch with me 24/7. I was like, oh, it's a cell phone.
Yeah, it's a cell phone. And he checks in. He like picks up the phone in the cradle and is like, yes, I'm home. I'll be home for the rest of the night. Click. And then his wife basically comes in and immediately is like, I don't like having all that equipment in the house because it's messing with my oven. The microwaves are ruining my oven. It is never explained more. I have to imagine that the microwaves are just overcooking everything that she makes.
I think that was just her way to cover for her bad cooking.
Maybe that's why he had lamb chops at lunch.
At my mom's house, I swear to you guys this. When she would run the microwave, the Wi-Fi would drop off.
What?
I swear it was happening. And my mom was like, it's not happening. You are losing it. And I was like, it's happening. I was like, it is dropping me when you use the microwave. And like we got into this huge argument and I sounded like a paranoid, delusional person.
You do.
I was like, your microwave.
I can honestly just see Mikey at like 21, home from college, trying to play Halo with his friends online, yelling like, Mom, stop making the meatloaf.
Cool it with the Hot Pockets, Mom.
Pizza rolls taste better in the oven anyway, Mom.
Yes. I said put them in the oven.
Anyway, so his wife doesn't like the equipment. It's affecting her oven. And this is where we hear the army guys say, we have to hope that they find them. Maybe we'll never find them. They could be anywhere. And it's pretty obvious that he's referring to
the zombies.
So we get another time card that says 7:30 p.m. EDT.
And it cuts back to the kids. Yeah.
In the car, which is like an old convertible that says suicide spray painted on the side of it.
Yeah.
And they're all, and I mean all, like 8 people piled into this convertible going to pick up Freddy.
Yeah, where's Freddy gonna sit? That's like my one question.
God only knows. I mean, half of them are on each other's laps and they're complaining about the car. And this is where the character that we find out later is named Suicide, a la the sidecar paint, says, I like it. It's a statement.
But he also, like, as he's driving, lets go of the wheel and turns around and tries to choke one of them to death while driving at high speeds on the road.
I will say that Suicide does have a point because they only call him when they need a ride, and that hurt his feelings.
Yes, and that's what he complains about this entire drive.
His name is Sue-a-Ride, not Suicide. That's what it was.
I love Suicide in this movie because and it must have been like a personal choice for like an actor's choice where his character has the most characterization of anyone in this entire film. Where he has like an ethos and a point of view, and he's like, yeah, you guys never call me. No one ever wants to actually be my friend. They basically just think I'm spooky. No one wants to be near me and have some damn respect for the dead in this graveyard. And you're just like, who is this guy?
I loved his character because he looks like Punk Biff.
He does.
He does, yes.
Every time he was on screen, I was laughing. He was my favorite character.
This isn't just a costume page.
I do think it's funny that when Trash throws herself at him, he like could not be bothered. She's like grinding up on him full on naked and he's like, whatever, get off me.
Yeah, I've got notes on that later because he has like a mini soliloquy.
Yes.
It's really
It's
funny.
amazing. I can't wait. We'll get there.
So they drive up to the medical place and it's still like 7:38, give or take. And they ask Tina, they're like, what time does he get off? And she's like, 10. And they were like, why'd you make us drive over here? What's wrong with you?
We're over 2 hours early, Tina. What's
are we
doing?
Wrong with you? And so Suicide says, I don't want to wait 2 hours. And somebody points out a cemetery right next to the medical supply. So there's a medical supply, a graveyard, and then on the other side of the graveyard is the mortuary. And so they suggest, hey, let's just roam around in there. And one of them says, I've never seen a graveyard. I don't know nobody who died.
Yeah, I've never met a dead person. Like, what? You're an adult.
One of them, as they're kind of pulling their stuff out of the car to walk into the cemetery, just says, I just want to party. What are the road flares for? And then the road flares never come into play as far as like the plan later. They just are waved around while Trash dances.
Yeah. They're not a part of the plan. They're a part of Trash's stage show that she's going to be putting on in about 10 minutes.
So they break into the cemetery, and the first thing Suicide says upon walking through the gates is just, this place is a mess.
I do feel like Suicide is a little upset that people aren't taking better care of the cemetery.
I do too.
Yeah.
While they're breaking into the cemetery, which has not been kept up, and I do think Suicide is mad about it.
Suicide's got feelings, man.
So many feelings. Freddie wakes up in the medical supply, and so does his uncle.
Yeah, like they're at the basement of the medical supply where they got gassed by that container, right?
Right. So they wake up and they're coughing and struggling to breathe like they've been outside in Los Angeles this week. And
and they were like, I realize it's hard to breathe, but I hear it was a boy.
yeah.
Man.
The body in the container is gone, and they think it melted when it hit the air. And they're complaining, saying basically, I've never smelled anything like that before. I think I'm going to be sick. The uncle vomits a bunch.
Yes.
And then they go upstairs. And once they get upstairs, we get a better look at them because they're not stumbling around the basement. And if you watch this again, watch Frank, watch his sweat patterns.
They're all over the place.
They change shot to shot,
Yeah.
scene to scene. It is baffling where he'll be like covered in sweat all down his front, and then that sweat's gone, and now it's under the armpits, and now it's the back, and now it's a little bit on the front and the armpits, and it's crazy.
It's so noticeable, Paige. I thought it was intentional. Like, I thought they did it on purpose.
Yes. And he says, well, we shouldn't tell Bert about it. Let's just spray deodorant. And so he just starts like Lysoling the air.
Yes. Yeah.
And he says, what was that? It sounds like a dog. And they walk down the aisle, and it's coming from one of the split dogs that's alive and panting, which it is extremely small for a dog.
I mean, I have 2 dogs, the biggest of which is maybe 12 pounds.
But he throws it on the ground and beats it with a crutch.
Yeah, he tries to kill it with a crutch.
Yeah, it's really sad.
Did you guys notice the dead butterflies flapping their wings?
Yes.
did. I did, and I wondered why the skeletons didn't come alive.
No, there's no brain to reanimate there.
But there's one in the cemetery that's just bones as well.
I mean, if you're looking for continuity in this movie,
That's true.
I think we're looking at the wrong place.
Fuck it. So they start to hear banging from the cadaver room. They decide to lock the cadaver in, realizing that it's now been reanimated by the thing that got
By that smoke, yeah.
the container, yeah. So they run into the office, and Freddie.
I love this part. I'm sorry. Because Frank is like yelling, we got to come up with a plan. We got to come up with a plan. And Freddie's like, let's call the cops. And Frank's like, no, that's dumb. You can't call the cops. Well, let's call the army. No.
At one point he says, if you like this job, and Freddie just goes, like this job? Because it's his first day.
Yeah.
And this is happening. Now, during this scene, did either of you pause and read the eye chart behind them?
Oh my God, no. What did it say?
It says, so the reason I noticed it is because it didn't have the typical eye chart letters.
Okay.
And so if you read it, and you can only read part of it because it's not really close enough to get a good look at. I didn't have the chance to go back and look in other scenes and see if you could see it other places. But it says, Bert is a slave driver. And then it gets harder to read.
Oh my God. Oh, I love it. Well, that brings us to who they actually call, because they call Bert the boss.
They call Bert, and Bert is on his way. We cut back to the cemetery where Trash keeps talking about death. And she's like, have you ever thought about what would be the most horrible way to die?
But she's like turned on by it. She's talking about literally like zombies eating her, and that is like her fetish.
Yeah, it's Chekhov's sexual fantasy is what it is, because like she ends up describing the exact way that she dies.
Let me tell you something about Chekhov's sexual fantasy. There's no guarantees.
Wait, that's the whole thing with Chekhov, though, is if you introduce it in Act 1, it has to pay off by the end of Act 2.
But I monologue about what I want all the time, and it doesn't happen.
Well, yeah, you live in real life. This is a movie.
Yeah.
Damn it.
This is the second time we see in this movie something introduced now in Act 1 that pays off literally exactly at the end of Act 2. It's like somebody was taking a screenwriting class while they wrote this movie.
I would not be surprised.
So her fantasy is for a bunch of old men to eat her alive, and she's getting turned on by it.
Yeah.
And she starts taking off her clothes. And then one of them yells, she's taking off her clothes again, which means that this is a common occurrence.
Oh, Paige, it's not only a common occurrence, they have choreography to complement when it happens.
And that's why they brought the road flares.
Yes, yeah. They just knew that this is always a possibility, so they planned ahead and brought road flares.
That's what you do.
Mikey, no joke. That's the kind of friend I want to be for you. Like, I'm not saying you're going to go around and like get naked and I'm going to dance around with you, but like, I want to be that supportive of a friend that even if you did something that crazy, I would be there on board to yes and you in that moment.
I think I related more to suicide in this film than the rest of the characters.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's just as confused as us about what's happening and angry about it.
Yeah, he's not a fan. And she proceeds to perform a striptease on top of like a sarcophagus, basically, like an above ground stone coffin. And she gets what appears to be completely naked except for her leg warmers.
Yes. Well, it was the 80s, Paige. You never took off your leg warmers in the 80s.
Exactly. So we cut back to the medical supply, and Bert arrives, and he delivers his lines with no punctuation, and it is insane. He delivers conservatively 4 sentences in a row with no breaks, no like stopping for breaths, no intonation in his voice. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. It's like a wild monologue where he's just like, what are you doing? I've got a business to run. Didn't you think about me having a business to run? What are you doing here? And you're just like, what is this?
So I have a fun fact. The director, O'Bannon or whatever, he wanted all of their lines read like screwball 80s comedies, where like they're kind of stepping all over each other's toes. So they would rehearse which lines would like be heard by the audience, and other things were like background noise.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, it also makes for, if you're listening to the movie, every once in a while you just catch lines that you're like, what the fuck did they just say? So he decides that their only option is to destroy the evidence and keep their mouths shut. And he says, are you sure he's dead? If it's reanimated, you have to kill it. How do you kill somebody that's already dead? And they decide to go with the option from Night of the Living Dead, which is removing the head and destroying the brain.
Right. What worked in the movie?
So Bert hands Frank a pickaxe, like a red fireman's pickaxe.
Yeah.
And he makes Freddy open the door, and he says, when the cadaver comes out, brain it with that axe.
And Frank is like, I don't want to do this. I can't do this. Don't make me do this. And Bert's like, you're going to do it. I'm the boss. You have to do it.
Yeah.
And then he shouts the combination to Freddy, who opens the thing. And then the yellow zombie runs right at Bert and jumps right on Bert. It's awesome.
Yes.
So I think at the time they had not seen Fast Zombie, so this would have been like a weird scene to happen.
This is the first Fast Zombie. I have other notes about it and the other firsts that are in this movie. But yes, this would have been new. There would not have been Fast Zombies before this.
I mean, that makes sense because Bert was clearly not expecting it to run at him.
He was not expecting it to run at him, still screaming.
Yeah.
And then he manages to pickaxe it to the floor.
Which was pretty effective.
It was pretty effective. It's just stuck in place.
There is some special effects in this movie that I think hold up. Like, they're pretty good.
The one that we encounter later in the basement, I think, is some of the best effects in this movie.
You mean the Tar Man?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the one they strapped to the gurney at the morgue? Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm. So they then try to remove the head. So now it's just a headless body running around, which, fun fact, if you watch it closely, because they have to then account for a person in a headless bodysuit, the torso changes.
Yeah, it's taller. The torso's like longer.
It's taller, but it's also slightly fatter because they had to like fit a person inside it.
I love this movie.
Also, the head is still moving on the ground.
Yes.
They then suggest that maybe they should dissolve the body, the bones, and everything, which, if they had gone with this plan, I think the movie would have been over at this point.
I don't know, man. I think it would still release the smoke, right? It would have released the gases.
No, you have the Tar Man zombie in the basement.
Oh, that's true. That's true. You do still have the Tar Man zombie in the basement.
We just haven't, that hasn't been introduced in the movie, but he is there at this point. You're right.
Yeah, he is there at this point. So they decide that they're not going to dissolve it in acid because they don't think it can burn up enough of it.
But this is where Bert runs up these like little side stairs, stares out the window longingly, and gives you this like exposition dump about the next door neighbor who is the mortuary guy. Yeah.
Yes, a mortician.
I love that. I thought it was so funny because he looks out of that window like he's in a telenovela play.
Yes. And they decide that because the mortuary has a crematorium, they're going to try and get the body over there and see if they can burn it.
Right, but they got to cut it up first.
So they start cutting it into smaller pieces. We cut back to the cemetery.
Trash is still naked.
Which I
thought was insane.
Yes, she's no longer performing for everybody. She's just kind of walking around. And Suicide is just kind of staring into the night, scowling.
I loved it. Suicide is like the only deep thinker in the bunch. Like, he is really in touch.
Or as I call it, my high school days.
But he gives this like weird speech into the night.
Yes.
There's just like, nobody understands me. They always just say you're spooky. And then Trash, who is literally throwing herself at him, is just like, I like it spooky. And he's like, I have something to say. This is not a costume. This is a way of life. And she's actively
touching his penis.
Yeah, she's trying to undo his pants to blow him. And he basically says, what's wrong with you? Respect the dead, and stomps off.
He's the only one that has like proper respect for the dead.
It's wild.
I bet you guys did not see that coming.
No. And it made me so happy. The other two, Blue Hair and Nerd, look across the cemetery and they think that they see Freddy going into the mortuary building across the cemetery. And Blue Hair basically says, hey, is that Freddy going into that building? And the other guy's like, of course not. And then proceeds to try and hit on her. And she just kind of blows him off.
Well, we find out later in the movie that she's never liked him.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious.
That's one of my favorite points when we get to it. Because normally at that point in the movie, someone would be like, I actually always liked you. Let's make out. And she's like, instead, she's just like, I never liked you.
And I hate that we're all about to die and I'm with you because you're the worst.
It's
I love
so funny.
Cut to the mortuary where the mortician is embalming a cadaver.
Yeah, we get to meet Ernie here.
He has his headphones on. He can't hear them because of the headphones. And so when Bert comes into the mortuary, Ernie gets surprised and pulls a gun on him.
Holy shit, I just realized it's Bert and Ernie. Holy shit.
I have notes about that because that's not why they were named that.
Oh, wait, really?
Yes, which is even crazier for it to be Bert and Ernie and for the guy to be like, oh, I'd never seen Sesame Street. So I will.
Oh, my God.
That is in my fun facts because it's way weirder.
Oh, my God. Okay. I also like that, like, Ernie has clearly seen some shit because he is in a morgue with only dead people, but he's packing heat. And he pulls it at any jump.
Well, A, it is truly Chekhov's gun.
It is.
But also B, it's a very specific gun and it's tied to his name. We'll get to it in fun facts. It doesn't have anything to do with the movie, but it is important in fun facts.
Oh my God. Okay, I can't wait.
I have conservatively a page of fun facts for this movie. It's insane. Ernie says, and he's basically explaining to Bert what he's doing. He's saying that rigor mortis starts in the brain and then settles in the muscles, and it loosens up after a while, or you can break it out by flexing the muscles.
Yeah.
At this point, Bert asks him a favor, and he's basically like, hey, man, we've known each other for like 25 years. I need you to help me out with something.
How long have I been selling bodies for you, Ernie?
Yeah.
Right? We made each other a lot of money.
Yeah.
And Ernie is just like, of course, anything you need me to do. Bert's like, great, bring in the body parts. And he's immediately like, not that. Not with that. Which, like, you're a mortician. What did you think he would need help with other than disposing a body? That's like the only thing people would come to you for.
You see, Paige, Ernie would do anything for love.
But he won't do that. And I would do anything for Bert. I would do anything for Bert. I would do anything for Bert.
But I won't burn weasels. Everyone in this movie has like really weird, like logical decisions.
Oh yeah, they pull out like a cart of moving bags, and Ernie's like, "What the fuck is this?"
Yeah, he's like, well, I didn't sign up for this.
And they told him it was rabid weasels, that they came in as part of a shipment. You don't want to get bit. And Ernie's like, so call an animal shelter. Like, what the fuck is wrong with
Call
you?
animal control. We don't want big government talking about my business. I have a reputation. He's like,
Well, and he says, you don't run a pet store. So, like,
Yeah.
I don't know why people would be coming to you for healthy weasels.
it's such a thing I would say. He makes some really good points.
Mikey, while watching this movie, I really did think, I was like, Mikey is the Ernie of this movie.
The mortician?
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's like, okay, you don't want to call the animal shelter. And then, like, put him in the crematorium. They're like, why would I burn live animals? That's so cruel. I'll just shoot them out back.
Yeah,
he's
absolutely.
like, let me kill them first, which I was like, they're going to die almost instantly at the level of heat in that crematorium. Ernie fully just wants to shoot shit. Like that is his motivation in this movie. He was just like, let me kill.
Yeah, Ernie, like 100% wanted to be a mortician in 1885.
Yes.
Yeah, guys, you don't have a gun strapped to you 24/7 without wanting to shoot things.
Well, this is where I'm thinking, maybe most of those skeletons and cadavers that they sell at the medical supply are gunshot victims.
Yeah.
He shoots people coming out of the dentist office.
That's how they get the
You
perfect
have the
teeth.
perfect teeth.
Uh-huh.
What you don't see right across the street from this medical warehouse and the mortuary is a dentist office.
Is the resurrection dentistry.
I do love that it's called Resurrection Mortuary. That's insane. So they dump one of the bags onto the floor. It's a moving human arm. It immediately grabs Ernie's leg.
Does it?
It does.
I mean, it does, but it looks more like they forced it to like hit his leg and then sewed it to his pant leg.
Yeah. They basically then say, we've got a long story to tell you. So at this point, the kids in the graveyard are kind of split up. And this is where the nerd is hitting on blue hair, where she asks...
Vanessa Bayer.
Yeah, Vanessa Bayer.
Bobo Vanessa Bayer, yeah.
Bobo Vanessa Bayer. What happened to Trash and Suicide? Which is the first time we learn that their names are Trash and Suicide.
Yeah.
This is the first point that we find out that their names are Trash and Suicide. I spent 80% of this movie thinking his name was Trash.
I thought because it was his car that said suicide on it, that he was suicide. Yeah.
You got to look at the details of this film,
Right.
but not too closely. I don't think Trash was like her self name. I think that's what the name the group of friends gave her since she kept stripping down naked and dancing on top of gravestones.
I guess. I mean, I would say that sex positivity should not be an indicator of the quality of a person, but they do all refer to her as Trash as if it is her name.
Yeah.
Well, Trash is her middle name.
Excuse me, Trash was my father.
And I'm all about sex positivity, but the last strip show was in Kroger.
So Tina, Freddy's girlfriend, says, I'm going to go find Freddy. Don't go anywhere.
Right.
And then Spider, the only African-American character in this film, says, we'll wait for you. Don't worry.
Right. He's also like the smartest person in this movie.
He is the smartest person in this movie.
By far.
I will say that this is probably one of the best roles for a person of color in all of 80s horror.
Oh, all of 80s horror? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the guy...
Candyman.
As like a well-rounded character who's not defined as a person of color and like not a stereotype and like
Yeah.
I mean I think that comes from Night of the Living Dead where like the main character was a person
I
of color.
thought that's what it was too.
Oh, interesting. I didn't realize that.
So Night of the Living Dead, one of them, I mean, the main protagonist is Ben, and he is a black man, and it factors into the story, and it's one of the first times in horror cinema particularly where we have a black leading man, but it was also rare at the time in films in general to have a leading man of color. And that's why
Interesting.
Night of the Living Dead is so important historically for film. But I do think that he's kind of supposed to represent that archetype of a character because he's very pragmatic. He makes plans. If it were up to him, I think a lot more people may have lived.
Yeah.
He's also the one that's kind of looking out for everybody because the rest of the teens at one point leave him to die and he escapes and then still tries to save people. So like,
he's like a genuinely good person. Yeah,
he's a genuinely good person. So we cut back to the mortuary and Ernie says, if I let you use the crematorium, what's in it for me? This is a pretty big thing. But he doesn't name anything specific. He's just like, you owe me a big favor, which never pays off.
No, Paige, it does, but it pays off horribly. At the very end, when they're about to run to the car to get away, and Ernie has broken his foot, he's like, make it to the car alive, which is insane.
Which he says to Bert.
I know, and it's not come back and save me. It's not make sure I get out of here alive. It is, I just want to live in a world where I know you live and survive.
All right, so that just goes more ammo for my theory.
That they're in a relationship?
Yeah, secretly.
We cannot get bogged down in this because we've got tons of scenes until we get there. I think he knew he was going to die at that point and it didn't matter.
Fair enough. I mean, they all die, so none of this really matters.
So they load all of the parts into the crematorium. And as they were doing it, I thought to myself, what happens when they burn all that smoke? And then the movie immediately answered for me.
It shows you what happens.
They burn the body. The gas from the body goes into the atmosphere and starts raining down onto the cemetery.
Well, on the kids. Yeah.
On the kids. The teens run back to the car and Trash just leaves her clothes. She doesn't bother to gather them.
She tried and then it got caught on something. So she was just like, all right, fuck it. I'm just going to be naked the whole rest of the movie. It was insane to me.
So Tina goes into the medical supply looking for Freddie. Then we cut back to the teens piling into the convertible. And one of them just says, this is an open car. And then another one says, I don't have any windows. I broke them all out.
Yeah, Suicide said that. Yeah.
Suicide said he busted his windows out.
Which is so dumb. Why would you bust out your own window? Anybody's
He
windows.
has feelings, Todd. Feelings.
And then Trash is in the back and she basically says, someone get me a towel. There's something wrong with the rain. My skin is burning.
Yeah, but where do you think they're going to find her a towel?
Yeah, we obviously don't have a towel. This is why we call you Trash, because you are inconsiderate.
So it rains down onto the graves. We get a really cool cross-section shot of underground in the graveyard.
It is pretty cool.
We see water kind of dripping down and then through a coffin onto a pair of black shoes, which is actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
We cut back to the mortuary and the body is completely burned, which the timeline on this is wacky because it takes approximately 3 hours to cremate a body and another 1 to 2 hours to process the remains. But that amount of time doesn't seem to have passed.
So, fun fact about the yellow smoke, the mustardy smoke. The director wanted it to be that color, but the only way they could do it was by doing sulfuric smoke.
Oh, jeez.
So all the actors would get sick.
It's basically mustard gas.
Yeah.
What it is.
Well, that's a war crime he just confessed to.
Yeah. So we cut back from them having burned the body, and Frank and Freddie do not look good.
No.
They're both super, super sick. Frank screams and runs out of the room and then scream vomits into the rain and then comes back in because he's being burned by the rain.
That's how you know you've had enough to drink that night. If you're vomiting into the rain, you are cut off and need to be taken home.
Scream vomiting into the rain is going to be the title of my autobiography.
So Ernie, the mortician, calls for an ambulance. This is where we find out that it's Resurrection Funeral Home. This is the first time he says it.
That's what I had at my notes too.
And it was Resurrection Cemetery as well.
Yeah.
He tells them to pull around the back to the embalming room. He says that they've been poisoned, but they don't know what kind. And at this point, bodies start crawling up out of the ground. And it's
cool.
There's some real cool shots that they get that they do reuse at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
But the first time we see them, they're pretty cool. We cut to the car with the teens. They're trying to adjust the roof of the car. And they end up ripping a hole in the cloth roof and dousing Trash in more rain.
Who is still naked.
Now I feel bad for her.
We cut back to Tina, who is in the medical supply, and she finds Freddy's hat. So she goes downstairs to where the containers are, finds the open container and sniffs, and the corpse from that container is still alive and in the basement, and he comes after her, and she runs up the stairs where she encounters...
Well, also, he talks. He says,
He does talk.
brains.
He says brains.
This is the first time I heard a zombie talk, right?
Yes.
Todd, do you know what a zombie person says who was like really into origami?
Cranes. This is where she runs up the stairs and hits that third step, which breaks under her.
Yeah, it's Chekhov's stare.
So she runs, she hides in a cabinet, and at this point we get kind of a better look at what they call the tar man, but basically the zombie in the basement. And it's a combo of really good makeup, but also great physical work from the actor in that suit.
Agree. He looks awesome.
So good.
She barricades herself in the locker and like she's looking at the thing, so you're seeing all the great makeup. And this is where this time watching I got scared because he immediately works out like, oh, I'm going to use the winch and the chains to pry open her locker barricade.
This is when I realized that these are the scariest zombies we've ever experienced.
Because
they
smart.
they're smart. They can use tools. Like, that's terrifying.
So Suicide and the others come into the medical supply, including Trash, whose skin is burning.
Because she's still naked. Trash's acting style is just naked.
Naked.
Yeah.
She's a never nude, okay?
No, she's an always nude, Mikey. It's the opposite of that.
After reviewing her filmography, she is a frequently nude.
Oh, is she? Oh, jeez.
Okay, yes. Okay. She's an always nude. It's a personal choice.
There are dozens of them.
So they hear Tina screaming and they run downstairs. Suicide goes first and immediately gets brained by that zombie.
I was so sad.
Such a bummer. And he's one of the only bodies that doesn't reanimate. Him and Scuzz is the other one that gets killed by zombies but doesn't come back. In theory, because they have also been exposed to the gases, wouldn't a zombie bite from one of them cause you to die but then come back? That's the one part I wondered about with this movie, because it didn't seem to occur that way, except with Trash, where Trash comes back. But like,
yeah, Trash comes back after being ate.
I honestly got the feeling they just could not get Trash off the set, so they just kept writing her into scenes.
They specifically wanted her on the set, and it's again, we got to get to it in fun facts, or else we're going to spend this entire episode talking about Trash through this movie.
Should we just get it out of the way now and then not?
No, because it is enough information to derail the movie. So.
Oh, hey, do you know what gets derailed? Trains.
So they all run out of the basement, but they leave Spider guarding the door because they suck. So they basically leave Spider to die.
Yeah, they do.
No, he turns around and he's like, we have to barricade this door. You guys are idiots.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he barricades it himself. He barricades almost all the doors in this film. They literally abandon him. I was real upset by it.
But because he's a smart person, he handles it and survives. Yeah.
So we cut back to the mortuary where Freddy and Frank are now visibly corpse-like.
Yeah.
The EMTs are there taking their vital signs, and they're like, what kind of poison did they take? And Bert, who clearly does not care if they live or die, is like, I don't know, some kind of industrial chemical. And they're like, what kind? And he's like, no, I don't know.
But he's like a true business owner. He doesn't care about his employees. Yeah. He just wants them to get back to work. I don't care if there's a pandemic going on.
Yeah, and the paramedics are like, if we knew the chemical, it might save their life. Maybe I could find out. Maybe. I don't know.
From a tank. Which tank? Oh, I don't know. This is where we find out that they have no vital signs, or rather they have no signs of life. They don't have heartbeats. They don't have pulses. Right. And their temperature is room temperature.
It was like 70 degrees. Yeah.
They now cut back to the medical supply where Spider has managed to nail the door shut with Suicide down there because he is...
Well, Suicide's dead.
They run across the cemetery, which is now flooding, to get to the mortuary. And as they're running through the flooded cemetery, skeletons are rising from the grave.
It's pretty cool.
This is the cool part.
Yeah. Now, Trash does not have shoes because she took them off. And so she keeps slipping and she keeps falling into puddles, which again is just more and more water with the chemical in it.
Yeah.
And she finally loses her footing and is overtaken by a group of zombies, where she is eaten alive by old men, as she described in the first act of this film. But I don't think she liked it that much, because some fantasies should stay fantasies.
Fantasies rarely live up to
their expectations. That's true, Mikey. Yeah.
Never meet your heroes. They'll just disappoint you or eat you alive in a cemetery.
Yeah.
We cut back to the mortuary where Frank and Freddie are now with the EMTs, and the EMTs are like, hey, don't freak out, but you're dead?
They're like, no, you're obviously not dead. You're talking to us, but we don't know what to do. Let's just go get some stretchers.
And at the mortuary, all of the kids arrive after running across the cemetery, or rather half of them do, because some of them have gotten separated. And so it's Spider, Scuzz, and Tina that arrive at the mortuary. And they beg to be let in. Ernie lets them in. They lock all the doors. They tell him about the zombies outside. They can hear the screaming.
Yeah.
And they basically say they came out of the ground and they're after us.
I think the screams are probably the scariest part of the movie, because like zombie movies, you have like the zombie like the
moaning, yeah.
But like hearing people scream out in pain as loud as they can. As like a chorus was a lot more creepy to me. Like this movie could have very easily gone like a more horror route and still worked very well.
We find out that they're actually in pain, and the only thing that can solve that pain is brains.
Right. I mean, that's like 6 scenes from now, but yes.
Yeah.
So the two that didn't want to hook up, blue hair, Vanessa Bayer, and the nerd, run back to the medical supply. So they don't make it through the cemetery. They get separated. They run back to the medical supply and they say, where's Trash? I thought she was with us. We cut back to the mortuary. The EMTs have gone outside to get stretchers to transport Frank and Freddie.
Yeah.
They hear the screams outside. And so one of them says, I'll get the stretchers, you get on the radio and phone this in.
I thought this was pretty cool and scary.
This is a very scary, very cool shot in this movie.
Absolutely, yeah.
He gets into the ambulance and turns it on, and he's not looking up, and the headlights come on, and it illuminates just a wall of zombies.
Yeah, there's tons of them.
It's wild. And then they pull him out of the ambulance. They get his partner in the back.
Yeah.
It's mayhem. They finally get on...
Is this where they radio?
Yeah.
This is where they radio.
It's so good.
One of the zombies gets on the radio and goes, more paramedics.
They cut back to the mortuary. The kids are explaining what's happening. They're saying that dead people are coming out of the ground. There's one at the medical supply, and there's hundreds of those things out there. Back at the medical supply, blue hair Vanessa Bayer tries to call the police, and a zombie crashes through the window.
Yeah.
And almost gets her. So they lock the door to the office, but that phone is no longer accessible.
Right.
Then back at the mortuary, they have noticed that the EMTs have not come back from the ambulance, and the ambulance is abandoned outside. And so Ernie says, let's get out of here. We'll use the ambulance. At this point, Freddie and Frank are pretty clearly dead.
Oh, yeah.
But regardless, Ernie goes out to the ambulance, sees that it's abandoned. He closes the front door and sees a zombie eating one of the EMT's brains.
That effect was actually really good. Like, he was going deep on that dude's brain.
So the coolest thing in this scene is that he fires at that zombie, and clearly they have hired either an amputee or a zombie who is a little person with additions onto his arms, because what it looks like is the zombie is missing legs and runs towards him on the stumps.
It's so scary looking, though. Like, it's impressive.
Scary.
Yeah.
It is so freaky. It was so freaky.
Yeah.
So at this point, we realize that the paramedics are dead. They've got to call the police or the army, but all lines are dead. Ernie just barely makes it back into the mortuary.
Right.
And they start to break through the front door. He shoots at them. Doesn't make any difference. But they're coming from all sides. He gets supplies to barricade the windows. They try to barricade the windows in the chapel, but he says that they don't need to because there's bars. And it's just a bunch of stained glass that they just like instantly ruin.
They just like rip through it. Yeah.
It's like, fuck your stained glass.
I know. I do think that there are bars outside of them, but you can't see it because they can't get through, but they just destroy all the stained glass.
They've now barricaded all of them in the embalming room. We cut back out to the ambulance where zombies have climbed inside, and dispatch calls the ambulance, and a zombie answers over the radio and says, send more paramedics.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, this is the scene. We cut back to the mortuary where Freddy is in a lot of pain. And so Ernie, the mortician, is kind of moving his limbs, and it's pretty clear that he's going into rigor mortis. And they confirm that by kind of flipping him over, showing that he has blood pooling or lividity on the back of his back, essentially on one side where he's been kind of leaning. And at this point, Scuzz, who has a switchblade, says, "You're dead. You're going to turn into one of those things out there."
And he's right.
And he's right. Another ambulance shows up. They get out. They are instantly killed.
Yeah, like run down.
Instantly.
Yeah.
Run down.
It's terrifying.
They're breaking through the barricade at the front door of the mortuary. A skeleton hand actually reaches through and pulls Scuzz through, and he has a killer blood spurt.
Yeah.
Just like all over the door, like shining levels of blood. And they pull him back into the mortuary, and he comes back in with like half a skeleton lady attached to his head.
Spider axes her spine in half as she's being pulled back.
Is that how they get half of her? Okay.
Yeah.
So they pull her back in. They tie the half a lady to the table, and it's a very cool puppet.
It is.
Yes.
It's so good, especially for the 80s. So good.
Yes.
I actually thought their whole interrogation of the zombie was like a super effective, like scary scene. Like Batman interrogating the Joker Dark Knight style.
Because they're asking, like, why do you eat people? Not people, just brains only. Why? Just the pain. What about the pain? The pain of being dead.
Right.
It hurts to be dead. I can feel myself rotting. Eating brains makes the pain go away.
Yeah.
And we cut back into the cemetery where we see Trash rise from the dead.
And guess what? Still naked.
Still naked, but completely white.
Yes.
Like body painted white. And then she like thriller walks out of the cemetery and murders a man experiencing homelessness.
I also like that it had been raining outside, really like downpouring up till this point, and then she rises from the dead in the rain, immediately cuts to a homeless man, and it looks like it has not rained there for hours.
Right. The other cool thing is as she like dances out into that, she's dancing as if she's in Cats, and she's got the leg warmers and the white skin and the crazy hair, and it literally looks like they were like, "Oh, you were an extra in Cats? Perfect. Just do that."
Yeah.
here."
I really like the dialogue exchange between her and the homeless gentleman, where she was like, "Brains," and he was like, "Chains."
oh, brutal.
Oh, man.
I'm sorry.
So she bites him and murders him.
Yeah.
We cut back to the mortuary, and now that they've kind of got a little bit more of an idea of what's going on with these bodies, Ernie basically says to Bert and Spider, we have to keep them contained until we can figure out an escape plan.
And Tina is not about that life.
Tina is not about that life.
She's only making bad decisions today.
I'm not a huge Tina fan because I don't think she has done nothing but scream in the whole movie.
Well, it's Freddie and Frank scream as they carry them to the chapel where they're going to contain them. And Tina is crying the whole time, but it sounds like she's laughing. It's the strangest cry I've ever heard. Like, she's got a weird, crazy voice to begin with, but then she's also just like, and you're like, what? What are you doing? What are you doing right now?
My favorite part of the whole film is like when they had to move her and Spider just picks her up.
Yeah,
Yes.
why? She could have walked.
I had no idea why he did
There's
it.
nothing wrong with her, yeah. But like she's fighting with them because she does not want to leave her boyfriend, which I sort of get, but he's about to become a zombie. Like, and I think even one of, maybe Ernie that says it, I can't remember who says it, but they're like, we're not going to leave them or whatever. We're just going to separate from them from us because they are probably about to turn.
I wish I was there because I've been like, he's literally ghosting you right now.
Yeah, before your very eyes, he's turning into a ghost.
Headcanon, Tina should have been with Spider.
Agree. Hardcore
because
agree.
He's the one that kind of looks out for her
Yes.
this whole night. He protects her. He saves her a couple times.
Yeah.
And she's still like, Freddie, no. And you're just like, just Spider is right there. And he's way cooler. So the cops show up to the mortuary. They find both ambulances. They get out. They're investigating, guns drawn. they get attacked, they shoot first, ask questions later, and they get eaten by the zombies.
They don't get a chance to ask questions later, Paige, because they're dead.
They ask one question later, and that question is brains?
Brains? Question mark? And this is where one of the zombies leans into the cop car and pulls up their radio and says, "Send more cops."
Yes.
So back in the mortuary, they're trying to figure out what their plan is. They got to get to the cars. That's their only way out.
Did we establish that Frank and Freddie have been moved into the chapel and they're locked in the chapel with Tina?
Yeah, because a couple scenes later is when that changes.
Right.
So they're discussing what they have to do. They know they have to get to the cars because it's their only exit. Ernie, the mortician, discusses potentially holing up in the crawl space, which is above the room that they're in now. He also suggests that they can try to burn some of the zombies with nitric acid, which he says will destroy pretty much anything. Now, then we cut back to the chapel where Tina is and where both Frank and Freddie are really barfing, and it's really gross, but they're clearly dead. And she's holding Freddie as he dies and turns, and he then basically says brains, lunges toward her. She dodges it, and he chases her around the chapel, foaming at the mouth. But because her voice is shrill and annoying, they hear her screams.
I would argue it's because Spider's a good dude, and even though Tina made the decision to stay in the chapel with the zombies, he was standing by to save her if he needed to.
That is true.
I think when Freddie turns, it's like terrifying because he's like using knowledge from their relationship and being like, I know you would love me and do anything for me, so give me your brain.
Yeah. And he continues to gaslight her when he's a zombie.
Yes.
It's insane.
It's real upsetting. So they burst into the chapel. They throw acid at Freddy's face. His eyes, he's now basically blind.
Yeah, it melts his eyes.
They get back to the actual embalming room, which is the one that has the steel doors that they can kind of lock
And
off.
this is where Spider carries Tina because for whatever reason she can't walk all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Spider wants to call the cops, and so Ernie slaps him across the face.
Which is another red flag. If a business owner or whatever slaps you across the face for trying to call the cops immediately.
Yeah. This is also where the half lady that they have strapped down to the table is like screams singing about brains.
It's insane.
So crazy.
While her spine wiggles. Oh, it's so good.
This whole puppet is amazing.
In the attempt to save Tina and barricade Freddie and Frank back in the chapel, Ernie has somehow broken his foot, or at least that's what he says.
Winky blinky. He hasn't broken shit. Yeah. We know what really happened.
Headcanon, I think he got bit.
That's what I think too.
Back in the embalming room, they're laying out a plan to get to the cars. And Bert is like, I can get to the police car. And Spider says, great, I'll drive. Bert says, no, I'll drive. And then Spider just says, fuck you.
Yeah, like they get really mad about who's going to drive the cop car.
As they're leaving, this is where I started to notice that Ernie didn't look so good. His makeup's pretty pale. It's a little splotchy. If he's not supposed to be turning, his makeup is wild.
Right.
They really try to telegraph that he's turning.
Yeah.
This is where he makes the deal with Bert, where he's like, you owe me that big favor.
Oh, yeah. And that big favor is get away from here. That is not a favor. That is what Bert's going to do anyway.
It's the most romantic line in the film.
So Spider and Bert get to the police car. They drive off. They literally have to mow down zombies.
Yeah.
And they leave Ernie with Tina. And this is where I started to get the feeling that Ernie and Tina are kind of creepy because he's kind of like holding on to Tina. It's very weird.
He's very handsy with her in a way that makes me uncomfortable.
I hear what you're saying, but Spider had to carry her, so maybe he had to carry her too. She's not functioning due to her grief, apparently.
Yeah, she is hysterical. I don't know. He was just creeping me out. But anyway, so there's a crowd of zombies. They drive the police car back to the medical warehouse. And at one point, Spider is trying to direct him away and back onto like the main road. And he just says, "This way, you stupid honky."
Yes.
Which is
so
great.
good.
Oh, yeah.
So they drive to the medical warehouse. They go inside.
Well, I mean, they literally crash. Yeah, they crash into the medical warehouse and the car catches on fire.
Right. They get inside, and at this point, Spider's like, well, now we don't have a car. And Bert's like, well, my car is out there and so is Frank's, so don't worry about it. And then we literally just see off in the, like, through the window kind of in the side that all the cars are now on fire. That's just the fire grows. We cut back to the mortuary where now Ernie is kind of leading Tina up into the attic, and we hear Freddie calling for her throughout the mortuary.
Well, through the door to where they're sort of barricaded in, right? Because he's trying to get into that room as they're trying to get up into the crawl space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At the same time, Frank is in the crematory room, and he takes his wedding ring off, hangs it on one of the switches.
Oh, man.
Climbs into the crematory and burns himself alive after basically saying he was sorry. But that just means more smoke.
Yeah.
With the gas. Like, it doesn't help.
Well, he doesn't know that. And he didn't want to kill people. This was like a strangely strong emotional scene.
The fact that none of them have figured out that burning a body infected with this stuff causes fumes and that caused this is baffling to me.
It's happened twice already.
Yeah, and it seems like A to B.
I'm going to forgive him since he was dead.
Sure, I think that's fair. And he just didn't want to kill anybody. Like, this is a sweet gesture, even if it causes more of a problem.
Right.
Because he doesn't do it maliciously. It's all about intent, Mikey.
Now, this next scene is where we see the line of police cars coming towards both the cemetery and the mortuary and the police helicopters.
And this is where the zombies, like, waving them in with, like, those,
like,
airplane, like, the guy who's, like, signals airplanes to, like, park where they park and stuff. That's what he's using.
Yeah, so the zombies, like, wave them in, and it's a trap, and they attack all of the cop cars at once. So now we've lost, like, 10 cars worth of cops.
Yeah.
In one scene.
This is the scariest moment, I think, because it shows you how truly smart the zombies are. And there's no way you can beat this. There's no way you can win.
And they're announcing from the helicopter that there is a police blockade, and if you'd like to surrender, because they still think this is like people attacking people.
Right.
That you should come to the police blockade. And so in the medical supply warehouse, they say that we have to let them know that we're in here. And the only phones are in the basement or the office, which now both have zombies in them, which is lame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is lame.
We cut back to the mortuary temporarily, where we're in the attic and Freddie is being a gaslighting asshole.
Yeah.
And he's trying to get into that attic and basically saying, I can smell your brains. I know you didn't really want to hurt me.
What do brains smell like? That is a very confusing statement. Yeah.
It's real strange. But this is the scene where Ernie has the gun.
Yeah.
And he starts to point it at Tina's head, where it looks like he's going to kill Tina to save himself.
Yes.
I didn't read it like that. I read it like he was going to notebook this whole thing.
Yeah, it was going to be a murder-suicide. That's what I was going to say. It's definitely like the Notebook, a murder-suicide.
Yeah, and it may very well have been that. It just, we only see him point the gun at her.
Right.
We never see him point it at him. So back at the medical supply warehouse, they basically have to choose between the office and the basement. They choose the basement.
Right.
Where they get down and they see Suicide's body, R.I.P. And we see that there's the phone right next to the containers.
Yeah.
Which is like, why? This is the craziest layout ever. They take a bat and they literally knock the zombie's block off.
Oh,
which is
yeah.
they claim they're going to do. But they knock his head off, which just kind of incapacitates him for a little bit.
Yeah.
Long enough for them to call the army.
No, they call the cops first.
No, this is where they call the army.
They call the cops first. They talk to the commander at the. They call 911. They get connected to the commander at the police barricade where he's like, I've lost 14 guys already.
Oh, no, you're right. Like,
what's going on? And then the zombies all attack the police barricade. And he holds up the phone and lets the group listen to the cops being murdered.
Right.
This is where, so the zombies get to the barricade and they open fire and bullets do nothing. And they're running towards the barricade. As they're running, we kind of get flashes of certain zombies we've seen along the way. And one of them is Trash, who is literally like straight up Broadway level cats dancing towards this barricade. It's insane.
I think she likes her new life.
I think so too. I think she didn't like how it happened initially, but I think now she seems to really dig it.
She's fully embraced it, yeah.
She's making the best of a bad thing.
So at this point, once they realize the cops can't help them, they do finally call the army. which is when we cut back to Colonel Glover, which we now learn his name, Colonel Glover in San Diego, the army guy from the beginning. And he answers the phone and he just asks them a series of very calm questions of like, what did you do? And what effect did that have? And what did you do?
But like, we didn't need any of that. Like that, they could have cut out that whole 30-second conversation, of which we only get one side of.
I think it's better.
I really liked it. I think it set up for how calm he was going to be about what he does next.
Oh, yeah? How he murders a town?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
So, and he asks them, and how many acres does the cemetery cover? Great. Thank you. I'll switch you back to Captain Turner now. And then he walks over to his computer cabinet. A printout starts. He gets on another call and just says, yeah, we're at Q2 status. We've found the lost consignment of Easter eggs. They're in Louisville, Kentucky, but the eggs have hatched. And so we cut back to the medical warehouse where he says, sounds like they have a contingency plan. And Spider, smarter than everybody, just says, what is the plan?
Yeah. The only question you should be asking is that one.
Yes. We cut back and we realize that they are just going to nuke the city off the face of the earth. And we hear them basically setting up the nuke, setting in the coordinates. We cut back to the medical warehouse and he just says, do you guys hear anything?
It's like they hear whistling and he's still on the phone. He was transferred from the asshole major to someone else and he's talking to that person, and that person that Bert is talking to has to know that they're about to get murdered, and he's just talking to him like it's nothing.
It's not murder, it's containment.
I mean, you call it one thing, I call it another. They are murdering a town here.
Let's talk about nukes.
Let's get through what actually happens. So there's a mushroom cloud over a model city.
There's a record screech and a freeze frame in everybody's lives.
Yeah, basically. Because it freezes on them in the medical supply warehouse. It freezes on them in the attic. And we hear Tina.
And he busts through.
He does.
He busts through as it happens. So we see a mushroom cloud over a really poorly constructed model village, which is pretty funny.
My favorite model is the model of the nuclear artillery train.
Was it a train?
It was on train tracks. It was like a big artillery thing on train tracks. It was so funny. Yes.
But so it's a mushroom cloud. The time card says 5:01 a.m. EDT. And then we cut back to Colonel Glover on the phone and he says, yeah, only 20 square blocks destroyed, only 4,000 dead, which is huge. Huge. That's more than 9/11. That's crazy.
That is crazy. That's a lot of people.
Is it a lot of people?
It's like 1/10 of a coronavirus. So he continues and says, I wouldn't worry about the fires, General. Yes, people have complained of rain and burning skin, but everything should be back to normal by morning, which is how we know that it won't be, because whatever they nuked just put all that stuff into the air. That's why everyone's skin is burning.
Yeah, I literally wrote in my notes, oh my God, they're just making it worse because it's going to rain.
Yes.
And all the cemeteries are going to come to life.
Okay, headcanon. Also, nuclear weapons, not good for the atmosphere and rain.
That's true.
Because they have sequels, so I'm just going to assume that the nuke worked.
Well, no, you could argue that the next section where they reuse footage of those skeletons and all those bodies coming up ensure that it did not work.
They show you it didn't work, Mikey.
Well, it shows you in the sequel that it did work, so eat it.
And that's the movie.
Roll credits.
So, having seen the movie, having talked about the movie, what did you guys think this time when you watched it?
It's genius.
I really liked it.
It's insane. I had to keep reminding myself that this came out the same year like Back to the Future did, because that is such a high quality, great movie. And this is such a low quality, great movie. It is so bad it's good. It is the definition of so bad it's good to
and
me.
I think there's a lot of great ideas in this movie, and I just don't think they had the budget to pull it off.
I think so too. I think if you made a scary zombie movie, which is not what this is even trying to be, but if you made a scary zombie movie with these type of zombies, that would be super scary.
Fun fact, I feel like this is the precursor to Planet Terror. There are so many similar things about this movie that are also in Planet Terror. The only difference is the zombies in Planet Terror are easier to kill, but there's just way more of them.
So Planet Terror is what happens this next morning as this movie ends, because there's way more of them. But yeah, I think it's a great movie. I think everyone should watch it.
Yeah, it's tons of fun. I loved it. It was so much fun.
I liked it a lot. I mean, and then watching it now as like an adult, I liked it better because I felt like oddly the characters were better written. I have no, like every character was like decent. Like no one seemed like terrible except for like the kids.
I think people are selfish. I don't think anyone is malicious.
Right.
If that makes sense.
I really sort of want to see what Mikey watched when he was a kid on TNT, because you would have to cut out every scene with trash in it.
I Googled this during one of our breaks, okay? Because I was like, how did this happen? They filmed a TV version of this movie.
Oh, okay.
That was a thing people used to do back in the day.
And one of the punk jackets, the back said, fuck you.
Yeah.
But then when they filmed the TV version, it just says television version on the back of the jacket.
That's amazing. So I guess Trash wasn't naked during the TV version, I guess?
That would make sense.
I don't remember any of that.
Okay, yeah, that would make more sense.
This whole franchise is bonkers, and I just want you guys to be here for it.
Oh, I'm here for it, Mikey. I'm here for all the Mikey movies you want to bring at us. All right, Paige, you want to do some fun facts?
Let's do this shit.
Hit us with the fun facts.
This movie is known for introducing the concept of zombies eating brains as opposed to just eating human flesh like previous zombie iterations.
Wow, really? This is the one that started from?
Yes.
Holy shit.
And you'll notice in most zombie movies, they don't specify brains. They just
Right.
specify flesh.
That's crazy.
Todd, this crazy 80s B movie introduced so many zombie concepts that fly that are still around to this day.
That's insane. Because I've not seen George Romero's zombie movie, Night of the Living Dead. I've not seen it.
Yeah, Night of the Living Dead, and then the original Dawn of the Dead. And then there are sequels to that too.
So I assumed that was something that was set up in that very first one.
Absolutely not.
Wow. Okay.
No.
This is also one of the first times in a movie, and arguably one of the only times in a movie, where they have talking zombies as
Yes.
opposed to just moaning. One of the few other films is Day of the Dead. They teach a zombie to talk, and then in Planet Terror, the zombies talk.
Okay.
But in Planet Terror, the zombies are much more similar to the zombies in this movie than pretty much any other zombie movie, in that it's more of a exposure to a chemical kind of situation.
They're the scariest, man. The zombies in this movie, the scariest type of zombies ever.
This is the first iteration of quote-unquote fast zombies. It's the first film to show zombies running.
This is blowing my mind. Like, these are like industry standard things that zombies are now, and they came from this shitty B horror movie.
The studio didn't like the fast zombies because they'd never been done before. They're like, your zombie movie's stupid. These zombies are fast.
That's insane.
It's also one of the only zombie films ever where zombies cannot be killed by a headshot. Because even in the original Romero films where zombies aren't trying to eat brains, a headshot will kill them.
Right.
Same thing with pretty much every zombie movie. I believe that it's not until Dawn of the Dead that we get the famous phrase, removing the head and destroying the brain. But that becomes zombie canon right before this comes out as well. The film is also notable for its soundtrack. The soundtrack of this movie is made up almost entirely of unknown Los Angeles-based death rock and punk rock bands of the era.
Yes.
Because they agreed to have their music in the movie almost for free, and many of them appear as zombies in the film.
No shit,
awesome.
That's awesome. The music is sort of like 80s bad, and I mean that like as a compliment. It is like everything bad the 80s had to offer, but it's also sort of awesome, and it fits the tone of the movie so well. Like, I liked the music in it, but it's not great. Like, you wouldn't just blast this driving down the interstate with Suicide. You know what I'm saying?
There were multiple points in the movie where a song sounded familiar but not. And I was like kind of bopping to it, but then I didn't actually know any of the songs. And it's just because they have that 80s sound, but they're from mostly unknown bands from Los Angeles.
It's like Guns N' Roses light.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that era.
Oh, I think you mean Pistols and Tulips.
It is a little more Pistols and Tulips and Guns N' Roses.
Welcome down to Zombie City,
where the brains are tasty and the girls are pretty.
I want you please take me home.
Yes. Let's get into Suicide.
That's a weird sentence, but I'm into it.
So I was fascinated by Trash and Suicide. They were my favorite characters in the film. Suicide is not as interesting. He did some kind of low-level film work, and a little bit of TV work. He was on like Murder, She Wrote and a bunch of stuff like that.
All right.
And then died at 35 of leukemia.
Oh.
Only about 10 years after this movie came out.
Oh no, not suicide.
Let's talk about Trash.
Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Trash, when I looked her up, I recognized the name immediately and
really?
couldn't believe that I hadn't recognized her in the film. Trash is played by Lynnea Quigley. Does that name ring a bell for you, Mikey?
Yeah.
I don't recognize it.
Lynnea Quigley is a noted scream queen. She has been in close to 100 horror films.
What?
Yes. She was in Silent Night, Deadly Night, Dead Heat,
What?
Nightmare on Elm Street 4.
We did Silent Night, Deadly Night, Mikey.
I know we did. Shoot all Santas on sight.
Best line of dialogue ever spoken on a film ever.
She was in Night of the Demons, but most importantly, and the one that I knew her from, she was in Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. Have either of you
I've
seen
not
Hollywood
seen-
Chainsaw Hookers?
I have not seen that.
It is nonsense. Like, we shouldn't do it. It doesn't hold up. It's barely a film.
Oh, wow.
It's barely a YouTube movie. It's crazy. But she has worked in B-movie horror and independent horror from 1975 to present. She still currently works in movies.
That is amazing.
Good for her.
She works almost exclusively in B horror. Almost like grindhouse and low budget horror. That is her wheelhouse. That's pretty much all she does. And in part, it's because at a certain point in her career, that's where she would get typecast because that's all she'd been in. So she, at a certain point, just kind of leaned into it. And that's who she became. And there's documentaries on her life. There's a book about her life.
Really?
Super interesting. When I realized that that's who it was, I was just like, what are you talking? That's insane.
That is amazing.
Another note about her, when she's dancing naked in this movie, she had to be fitted for a cup-shaped vaginal prosthesis that she wears for almost the entire film.
Oh, no.
And it is a Barbie doll crotch with no detail. And if you go back and watch it, you will notice that even though it looks like she is fully frontally nude, there's no flaps, there's no labes, there's no nothing. It is flat like a Barbie doll. Now, Lynnea Quigley had no problem with the full frontal nudity. In fact, she has been full frontal nude in many other films, including Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers.
Okay.
But the producers of the film insisted that she wear it when they visited the set the night that her dance was supposed to be filmed. So she was kind of annoyed because she was like fully ready to do it naked. And they were like, you have to wear this weird cup thing.
Oh my God.
That's
Yeah.
so crazy.
I actually feel better about the massive amounts of nudity in this movie, knowing that it was her choice to do it, that she's the one that wanted to do it.
Completely consensual. And she was just like, I was fully ready to do this naked. And I mean, I guess if you guys want the weird Barbie crotch, sure. Because it meant that she had to go like sit in a bunch of makeup, and then it was not easy to dance in because it's just kind of like glued to you.
Right.
Like, so the Tarman zombie in the basement is performed by actor and puppeteer Alan Troutman. He's actually best known for his work with the Muppets, where he was a Muppet puppeteer, and then he did this movie. The half-corpse zombie character on the table was a puppet created by a man named Tony Gardner, and it was puppeteered by Tony Gardner, but then also the actor Scuzz, who's the Mohawk one, which is why he's standing near the table. He's helping to puppeteer it.
Oh, no shit. Okay.
Yes. And it was also production designer William Stout worked on it as well. And that character and that puppet launched Tony Gardner's career as a makeup effects artist because it was so good.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah.
Now, let's talk about Bert and Ernie.
Yes.
So, contrary to popular belief, they are not named for Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street. The director had no idea that there were characters named Bert and Ernie on Sesame Street.
Oh my God. That's insane.
He just named one character Bert because, and then he named the character Ernie as a thinly veiled reference to an infamous Nazi SS officer named Ernst Kaltenbrunner. And if you look closely, Ernie in the film seems to have a photo of Ava Braun on the wall of his embalming room.
That is insane.
They also established that he might be able to speak German, and the gun that he carries is a Walter P-38. That's who he's named after. It's not Bert and Ernie at all.
Well, fun fact, that is actually who Ernie in Sesame Street is named after. So I could see how that could happen, yeah.
Now, originally, the character of Frank was not supposed to kill himself. He was supposed to transform and turn just like Freddy and join the zombie mob. But the actor didn't wish to film any scenes in the rain because it was cold.
Oh my God.
Instead, he suggested that his character incinerate himself, and the director was just like, fine. As we mentioned, this film has influenced, zombie everything. References to the film can be seen on The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror 3, as well as the episode where Bart and Homer get leprosy, as well as multiple episodes of South Park. Bert is played by Clu Gulager, and my husband shared chili cheese Fritos with him while watching Nashville in 35mm at Quentin Tarantino's theater, The New Beverly. So
What?
there's that too, I guess.
That's amazing.
Oh, are they friends?
No, I don't think he's alive anymore.
Oh.
I'd be surprised if he was. I think they just had a chance meeting
That's amazing.
over some chili cheese Fritos. I don't think they shared. I think they just both had them, maybe.
In my mind, they were feeding each other.
Yeah, Lady and the Tramp style.
Absolutely.
And those are our fun facts.
Well, thank you for those fun facts, Paige. That's amazing. So let's talk about box office. So this movie came out in 1985. What do you think the budget for this movie in 85 was?
It was notoriously low budget. I'm actually going to say $500,000.
Oh, okay. Mikey, what do you think?
I'm going to say $1 million.
Okay. The budget for this movie was $4 million.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Paige, you're right. That is low budget, but I wouldn't say it's ultra low budget.
Yeah.
And it came out on August 16th, 1985. And the week it came out, the number one movie that week, sadly, was not this movie. It was Back to the Future.
Yeah, not surprising.
And Back to the Future had been out 7 weeks and was still at the top. The second movie was Volunteers. And then Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Love that movie.
Right? And then The Return of the Living Dead was number 4 that week. And it made $4.4 million in its opening weekend, which is not bad.
Oh, good for it. Yeah.
That's not bad.
It made more than its budget back, right? And then the fifth one that week was Year of the Dragon.
Oh, that's also a good movie.
This didn't really get an international release, but what do you guys think it made total at the domestic box office?
I'm going to say it made $20 million, which I know doesn't sound a lot in what we talk about these days.
I mean, if you adjust for inflation, that's a lot of money.
I was gonna say 15, but now I'm not sure. I'm gonna stick with 15.
All right, Mikey. You are the closest. It made $14.2 million in the theaters.
That's still pretty good.
It's really good. It really is.
I bet this movie had legs, though. Like VHS renting throughout the 80s.
Oh, I bet it made money on top of money on TV and DVD and Blu-ray sales and that kind of stuff. If you adjust for inflation, though, that $14.2 million is like 36, roughly, $36.5 million. Just a side note fun fact about box office stuff. Back to the Future made $385 million at the box office that year. But anyway, so that's box office.
All right, that's scary scale. The scary scale, listeners, is a scale between 1 to 10 of how scared we are while watching the film at the time.
Yep.
Not in any way saying of the quality of the film. So our number 1 example is Ghostbusters. Our number 10 example of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right.
Arachnophobia for me, though, personally.
One, Hereditary for me. So yeah.
All right, so Paige, what are you going to give it?
Oh, I'm going to give this a 1. This wasn't scary, but I really liked it.
Yeah, same. I'm going to give it a 1, but everyone should watch it. It's definitely worth watching. And Mikey, what are you going to give it?
I'm going to give it a 1 because I'm undead inside.
Oh, shit. Did you say I'm undead inside?
Yeah, that's what I said.
I love you so much. That's amazing. I mean, but I'll say that this is not a scary movie. Like, I don't think you're giving this a 1 because you're undead inside. I think it's just not scary. So this week we watched The Return of the Living Dead. What are you guys making me watch next week?
Well, we are not making you watch anything next week.
It's listener request.
Yeah.
We haven't done a lot of zombie films. We haven't done a lot of found footage films.
Right.
So we did found footage as our listener request.
They picked Rec, and we do mean the original Spanish language version of Wreck.
Okay.
So please watch the 2007 version of Wreck.
I know a lot of people have been asking for this movie for a long, long time. It's one of the ones that we get messaged about the most. I know that one person in particular threatened to gently overturn his table at home if this one didn't win the request, and it won. So I'm sure he and his table are very happy that it won. So watch the Spanish version. It came out in 2007, you said, Paige?
2007.
Watch that version of Wreck. I'm legit terrified. People have been telling me, like, when we announced that this one won, everyone was like, oh, it was nice knowing you, Todd. So I'm legit scared.
It is only 78 minutes long.
Oh.
So if it makes you feel any better, it's going to be bad, but it's not going to last as long as others.
That's like what's written on my dating profile.
Oh, Mikey. So, Mikey, do you have a review for us to read?
I do.
Well, before you read it, let me let them know how they can have their review read on the podcast, and that is simply to leave us a 5-star text review on Apple iTunes, and leave us a little text, a little something for Mikey to read, and we'll read it on the podcast. So, Mikey, who's this week's review from?
This review is entitled Heart Emoji, and it's from Lauren Sky 01.
Oh, Lauren Sky, thank you so much.
She says, this podcast is so, capitalized, clap emoji, good, capitalized, clap emoji.
I like it. I like it a lot.
I started from episode 1 about 3 weeks ago.
Oof, sorry about those episodes.
She's binged at least 50 episodes in that 3 weeks' time.
Wow, that is a lot.
And now she says, makes me want to watch the scary movies they've talked about now. 5
Aw.
stars.
Well, Lauren Sky, thank you so much for that awesome 5-star review. You have a lot of catching up to do, but at least you're into the Mikey episodes. That's where they start to get real good.
Yeah, I turned it around. I take full credit.
You absolutely should. I can't believe how many reviews we've been getting recently. Like a month ago, were in the 300s for reviews, and we're at 481 as of today. That is insane. So thank you guys for leaving reviews and checking out the podcast. We really, really appreciate it. And if you haven't left a review, leave a review so Mikey can read it on the podcast. We are a member of the Consequence Podcast Network, so if you want to check out their stuff, go to consequenceofsound.net. If you want to check out our site, go to horrorvirgin.com, where you can see links to the merch store and other great stuff like that. And if you want to follow us on social, we are at Horror Virgin, and you can also follow us individually. Paige, you got to help me out.
It's Paige Wesley on Twitter, Rampage Wesley pretty much everywhere
That's where it is. Okay, so Rampage Wesley pretty much everywhere else. And then Twitter, it's Paige Wesley. Mikey is at M Randolph24 everywhere, and I am at Todd J. Awesome. And if you want to listen to pretty much this show, but a romantic version of this show, listen to our romantic movie podcast called Romancing the Pod. It's Mikey, Paige, and I talking about romantic movies. It's hilarious. This past week, we just did 27 Dresses, and it was bonkers, and Paige really hates that movie.
I really dislike that movie.
It's amazing. It's a great episode. And also, you can check out Paige's other podcast, The Cult Podcast, where her and Andrea Gazzetta and Armando Torres talk about cults. It's amazing.
Paige has 2 families.
I technically have 3. I'm also on Black Card Rehab with Crystal Adams every Wednesday as well.
Yes. So guys, check it out. So if you want to help financially support the show, please do by going to patreon.com/horrorvirgin. We have a lot of great Patreon levels, a lot of great things. We actually opened up 10 more Burn It Down spots. So if you've been waiting to get on that Burn It Down level, there are spots available now. There hadn't been for over a year, but now there are. There's also one top level that we added, and there's only one spot available, so you guys have to go check that one out. That one's my favorite. And if you can't help financially support the show, but want to get your daily free content, join the Facebook group at facebook.com/group/horrorvirgin. But we also link it once a week, so just go to our social, and you'll see it linked every week. So join that awesome family that's growing. I mean, we're almost at 1,300 members. It's insane. And it's very, very supportive. I love that community so much.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be it for us this week. I'm Paige.
I'm Mikey.
And I'm your Horror Virgin Todd, guys.
Have a great week.
God damn it. Just say have a great week. Why does it have to be another thing?
I say have a great week. You have to have your own thing.
Bye, zombie nerds. This episode was brought to you by Nick B.
Nick B, fun fact.
Oh, yeah?
He was a LARPer for a long time.
Wait, a live action role player?
Yes.
What did he live action role play?
He role played the Spanish Inquisition and would run around, and if anybody was wearing shorts, he would try to strike them.
No one expects it, man. Just no one sees it
No
coming.
one does.
Yeah.
Nobody does. But also, you can't just be walking around with your knees out like that.
That's Satan's knees.
What? Satan's work is done on your knees.
Oh.
Gardening?
It's done on your knees.
Oh, yeah. Gardening, yeah. To create life, yeah, out of the ground. That's
to harvest boners.
This week was also brought to you by
Ori. Ori tried to save a bunch of people who were trapped in a mortuary even though it was surrounded by zombies.
Oh, yeah? What happened to Ori?
She died.
We shouldn't talk about it.
Oh, well, Ori, we appreciate your sacrifice. This episode also brought to you by Mads.
Orca Borka.
And this Swedish fun fact I thought was very fun. The Swedish Monarchy is one of the oldest in the world, and it dates back 1,000 years. It's also included 11 dynasties, with the current one, the House of Bernadotte, ruling the longest.
The House of Bernadotte?
Yeah, Bernadotte. So close to burn it down. It's so close to burn it down, which is one of the reasons I loved their house name. But Jean-Baptiste Bernadotte was the first of his line on the Swedish throne. He was born in France in 1763 and was named heir to the throne in 1810. He changed his name to Karl XIV Johan. I don't know what that means. The Swedish royal family is related to all the reigning royal courts of Europe.
I mean, many of the royal courts are all related because of the way that they intermarried during that time period. So
a little bit of incest going on in the royal families of Europe.
Touch of hemophilia here and there.
Yeah, these guys just bleed for days.
Yes.
We now return you to another episode of The Patrioticals.
Okay, the relationship has made it to the crashed sub.
Is the crashed sub underwater?
Yes.
Okay.
Or
so
is it like a classic Italian?
They're in the ocean.
like a sandwich page. I get it. I get it.
It's hit a meatball.
And some iceberg lettuce.
So Matthew decides to get into the mini sub because they found it. Tristram and Karun are in the bridge of the relationship.
Right. Well, I'd imagine Tristram stays there because he's dating the relationship.
He's just attached, like physically.
Well, yeah, like an anxious attachment.
Yeah, pretty much. That's a really good psychology joke.
Thank you, Mikey. I appreciate your validating of my joke.
Isaac was like, I think I'm going to sit this one out.
Okay. I didn't realize that was an option, but that's cool.
And guard Karun, because he's a space alien. We're not really sure what's up with him yet.
Oh, I was going to say, people didn't sit one out during the Moonderdome when they could have died. Like, they're really picking weird times for their lifelines, I think, in this.
Okay. Kate and Eddie and Matthew get on the mini sub.
To go underwater to explore the crashed sub. Yeah, that makes sense. That tracks.
Right. Well, because, Matthew's going to drive. And then Eddie has dolphins around the sub going with them because he talks to mammals.
Right, that makes sense. And honestly, those dolphins just want to have a porpoise in life.
Oh.
They've all been reading this book, The Porpoise-Driven Life. It's given them a lot of good pointers. They also read The Secret.
Anyway. Those are really funny. Okay, so they get down to the sub, and Kate uses her psychic powers to hold the water back so they can walk around in the sub.
Oh, that's got to make it much easier. Yeah, they don't have to dock with the sub. That makes it so much easier.
Yeah, so they're just doing that and don't ask questions. And on the sub, they find, they had to kill some of the robots that were on the sub still. Matthew does that with a sword that he's been carrying.
Oh, okay.
I was expecting more like a Roomba with a knife taped to it, but okay.
No, they were like underwater sailors, submarine sailors.
Seamen.
You can say it, Mikey. It's fine. We're not going to make sophomoric jokes about semen. Please.
What's funny about semen?
I don't know.
So he wiped the floor with them.
I mean, that's what you should do if you get semen on the floor.
Yeah.
Then they find the computer, and the computer doesn't say anything because they don't know how to read their computer. So they have to cut it out and take it back to Tristram because he's a fucking robot. So they go back up with the computery stuff, the hard drive and some stuff to make it work. So then Tristram was like, well, okay, hook that up to the relationship. So they do that, and they're like, okay, we have to go to Sweden.
What?
Apparently, there's a bunker on the coast of Sweden. That's where this sub came from, was Sweden.
Okay.
They'll find out more about the Illuminati, so they're like, we have to head there immediately.
Is it because the people on the sub could only talk to Swedish fish? Or because it was built from a flat pack sub kit from IKEA?
Honestly, they just want to know how to fix it, but the instructions are very confusing.
And they're missing a screw.
But Sweden's under like the complete control of the Illuminati. Like the Sunny D virus didn't get very far, and all of the people are like super safe, but they're super in the Illuminati stuff.
So what's in Sweden that's so important? Are we finally going to get to meet the head of the globalist agenda? Why is Mikey starting to sound more and more like Alex Jones every episode? Find out next week on another episode of The Patreonicals.
Consequence Podcast Network.